On today's show, why the Houston Rockets offense will be significantly better with the addition of Kevin Durant, and how Alperen Sengun and Ime Thompson's roles will continue to grow and evolve moving forward. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down our expectations for the Houston Rockets offense this upcoming season, why the offense will get significantly better with the addition of Kevin Durant, and how the roles for both Alperen Sengun and Ime Thompson will continue to grow and evolve and change this upcoming year. As always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks, here to talk about and break down and discuss our expectations for the Houston Rockets offense this season. An offense that hopefully looks quite a bit better with the addition of one, who did they get this offseason, Madison? It's like, what is his name again?
Some guy named Kevin Durant.
Yeah, like 7 feet tall, ball handling skills like a guard, one of the most efficient players in NBA history. Like, yeah, that guy should help a lot for an offense that looked pretty ugly at various points last season. Let's start right there with just this idea, on paper, you're basically swapping on. I know a lot of people are still, there's some Rockets fans that still struggle to wrap their heads around this a little bit. Just the idea that KD, there's no guard play. Like, the Rockets don't have a two guard anymore. Well, like, Amin's not their two guard offensively. KD is effectively the two guard on offense. Like, that's the way to think about it. He's effectively replacing Jalen Green in the confines of the Rockets offense. And when you look at, KD's efficiency versus Jalen Green's efficiency, that in and of itself might be enough to launch the Rockets into top 10 offensive territory. But there's so much to unpack here, from like KD's offensive impact and, what he does, not only brings himself, but what he does for the other guys on this roster, how the roles will kind of change for guys like Alperen Sengun and Ime Thompson, either growing into new roles or adapting their existing roles. Madison, where are you sitting at? What do you think is maybe the biggest change that we're going to see in this Rockets offense this next season?
I think the biggest change is going to be play finishing, efficiency, and shooting. I think those are going to be the biggest changes. I think these guys, not just, adding Kevin Durant, when the Rockets offense bogs down, they now have a guy who can get them through those stretches, right? And so that's what Kevin Durant does. And now you have a veteran-led starting lineup, right? Now this starting lineup is going to be veteran-led with Fred VanVleet organizing this offense. And I think it's gonna work like a chess match now. I think that they're all high IQ players on this offense now. The team, I think, will take some time to get their chemistry together, but I think Fred VanVleet is gonna run this like a traditional X's and O's offense. And I'm very interested to see this offense get started, but it's gonna be a lot of half-court play. It'll start with Fred VanVleet and Alp in the pick and roll. And I think Alp is going to take another leap like he did in Eurobasket with the ball in his hands. I think he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot out of the mid post. And I think there's going to be a lot of different actions, because the Rockets now are situated where they have several shot creators out of the mid-range and mid-post. Alperen Sengun, Kevin Durant, and Jabari Smith, right? And so there's going to be a ton of actions where guys are going to be coming off curls, misdirection screens, where these guys will be flashing up to get it at the free throw line and above, right? And we know how Ime Udoka likes to utilize that confusion in the screening to get backdoor cuts. to get those types of things. So I think all of those same things will still be there, but now we'll have the offensive execution that was missing. And that's what Kevin Durant brings.
Certainly, we're going to talk a little bit about, Alpi and Amin's kind of evolving roles in this offense in a moment. Sticking with the KD angle of things, though, I think one thing that, it's kind of stuck out like a sore thumb last season is, it felt like more or less every game, the Rockets came out with like this mandate, this goal to see if they could get Jalen Green going early. Yeah. Right. Because this was like Jalen Green was is a rhythm player. And for him, if you could get him some touches early, if you could get him to knock a shot or two down early in the game, it generally was a good sign for the rest of the game where he would be engaged. And it felt like those were the good Jalen Green games, right? Where he got rolling early and then was able to be consistent through all four quarters. Whereas if he struggled early in the first quarter, he had moments where he was better about kind of, finding himself after a rough first half. Then he'd show up in the second half, that kind of thing. But it was just it was just easier when he got going early. And I feel like this Rockets team doesn't have to do that anymore. They don't have to, I guess, try and, for lack of better terminology, try and spoon feed him some possessions early in the game to see if you get the good version of Jalen versus he's struggling tonight. Now it's, we're 3 minutes in, 4 minutes in, 5 minutes in. Okay, let's pivot. Let's start running more actions through Alpi, or let's get some Fred VanVleet, Sengun pick and roll, or let's get Dylan Brooks, trying to, abuse a mismatch or things like that. And so when you have a guy like KD as your tip of the spear, there is no warming up. KD just kind of comes out hot. He's ready he'll start knocking him down from the second he walks out on the court. And that's such a benefit to this group. And what's really interesting to me is Ime Udoka said this the other day when we interviewed him at the Patriots Day 9/11 event that the Rockets took part in. He talked about in some of his conversations with KD this offseason that KD's message to the young guys, to not just the young guys, but to the rest of the team, is that he just wants to fit in where he can. That he's not coming in with this idea of him being the head honcho or the go-to guy or whatever, even though that's what we're projecting him all to be. And obviously that's what he is and who he's been his entire career. That shows a very team first mentality and an unselfish mentality, to where I think that people are really underrating the impact that KD's going to have on the young guys on this roster, and truly how impactful he's going to be in the continued growth and development of these blossoming stars like Sengun, like Ime Thompson, being able to not only, provide his scoring gravity and helping them actually on the court, but just this idea that, no, you guys are stars in your own right. Go be you, right? Go do your thing. Alpi, go do your thing. Amen. Spread your wings, fly, attack, get downhill, do your thing. I can get my shots when I want to get my shots because I've been doing it for almost 20 years, right? That's KD's mentality, and I love that mentality.
Yeah, and he knows he can get hot. He's going to get his regardless, right? But I love that message, because young guys come in with a superstar with his resume will tend to defer at times.
They'll be timid, right? You don't want that.
Exactly. What does KD want? Is this shot not good enough for the off? You know what I mean? No, go play your games and let me fit in. I know how to get my shots in the floor. We want you guys to continue to develop, to continue to be stronger players, because KD knows he can't do it alone. He's going to need one of these young guys or two of these young guys to emerge as all-stars or high impact players to continue to develop, because these guys are nowhere near their primes yet. And we're still but we're in the window where they can start entering who they can be. And it's good for Kevin Durant that he recognizes that. And I think the guys are just going to have more room to operate with the gravity of Kevin Durant on the floor, which would also open up their games as they're getting better.
Coming up, we're going to talk about the evolving and changing roles for Alperen Sengun and Ime Thompson, how Kevin Durant complements those two guys. Plus, what is it going to take for this Rockets offense to finish in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 this upcoming season? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, $5 only. And if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. FanDuel's great because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds in front of you. Right now, you can head on over to FanDuel.com. Just take a look at the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Bills and Ravens both plus 500. Behind them, the Packers and Eagles both at plus 700. And then right now, the Chiefs in distant fifth place at plus 1,500. So for all those odds and so much more, check out FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Madison, you said something early in segment one that kind of stood out to me, and it was this. You mentioned that KD isn't really, a pick and roll kind of, player, or at least not the primary ball handler in a pick and roll action. And I don't want to necessarily like push back on it, but I want to just kind of posit this idea. And I think we've broached it a little bit on the show, but we haven't really gone full bore into it. But this idea that like Sengun is the most talented big man that KD has ever played with. And I think that in and of itself is maybe one of the reasons that we've never really seen KD truly establish a great rapport or a two-man game with another big, because he hasn't really played with that many talented bigs before. Like KD's bigs have never really, they've genuinely never come close to the level that Sengun is already at such a young age in his career. And I don't expect KD to suddenly become the primary ball handler. And by no stretch of the imagination is he going to be tasked with nearly the amount of playmaking responsibility that Jalen Green was tasked with this past season, right? You're going to take those Jalen Green playmaking reps and have to divvy them out amongst like, okay, Sengun takes a little bit more playmaking. Thompson gets more on-ball responsibility. KD will still playmake a little bit, but it's not going to be nearly as much as JG. Fred maybe takes on a little bit bigger responsibility, back to how it was like between him and Sengun year one, a lot of, pick and roll between those two guys. But that duo between KD and Sengun, I genuinely think it has a chance to be a top 5 star duo in the NBA this next season.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And one of the reasons is, like I said, mentioned in the first segment, is that gravity. I mean, when Alperen Sengun is operating on the low post, right? The ability of him to draw 2 and 3 defenders is going to be there. We saw it happen the entire second half of the season. Now imagine Kevin Durant as the outlet and Ime Thompson as the backdoor driver. You know what I mean? That is really pick your poison type of offense that the Rockets really executed very well last year, but now they just got a whole nother level of offensive threat on the perimeter that's going to be able to capitalize on those situations. And I do agree with you. Although Kevin Durant doesn't play a lot in the pick and roll, I think the dribble handoff coming off the screen threes are going to be there all day for Kevin Durant. There's still going to be a lot of screening in this offense. We have Alperen Sengun, one of the best screen setters in the league, as well as Steven Adams, another one of the best screen setters in the league, and has played with Kevin Durant before. And so if you think about that in the dribble handoff situations, especially in prime time, when we need a bucket, right? Those guys are going to be in those actions, right? And I believe.
Give me some empty corner action with Sengun and KD, and I don't know how teams are going to guard that, man. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, man, they better trap it. Yeah, but even if they trap it with Kevin Durant, with being 7'1", with his wingspan, his ability to find players with that increased height, including Alperen Sengun on the roll, I think it will be interesting to see if Kevin Durant will do a bit more playmaking out of the pick and roll with Alperen Sengun as the pocket man, as the roller down to the basket, because that's just not something we've seen for him before. But like you said, he's not played with a big this talented before. I think that Kevin Durant's gravity alone will help LP, but I think LP's passing will ignite Kevin Durant as well, because guys who engines of the offense have always gone very well with Kevin Durant.
It certainly feels like, and this was, this past season, it kind of felt like the Rockets, at least with how Ime Udoka utilized Alperen Sengun, he still had his opportunities to play make, but it didn't feel nearly the same as it felt in year one, where he got it felt like year one under Udoka. Alpi had tons of opportunities to make reads out of the middle of the floor, coming out of the short roll, really creating for his teammates. And this past year, it felt like the onus was on him to be more of a play finisher than to be an extension of the play, the playmaker, from whoever the initial, guy was starting the action, whether it was Fred, whether it was Jalen. And I still maintain, I don't know if that's when Sengun's at his best, right? Like, I feel like when he's at his best, it's what we saw during Eurobasket, where Alpi was, he was focused on playmaking first and foremost, and then he would score when he needed to. He would score when the defense was, gearing up on him, or sorry, he would score after it got to the point where he put enough pressure on the defense that they had to start, chasing out to shooters. And then once he was being guarded in single coverage, instead of forcing the issue, trying to beat two guys and, trying to score through double teams and through contact, he did some of that, but it just felt like his processing and his decision-making was on another level in Eurobasket, and being able to do that with, like you've said, Kevin Durant on the wings, flanking you, right? Running two-man actions with him, maybe a little pistol action with KD off the elbow, like things like that. It's going to look night and day different. And that's where on any given night, KD he's your number one option. He is. Like, KD's going to average the most points. I feel very safe in assuming KD's going to average the most points per game this season. He'll be the leading scorer. He'll be the number one option. He'll be your go-to guy in the clutch, all of that. But on any given night, like, your number two, some nights it might be Sengun, other nights it might be Ime Thompson. And I think that's going to be a very fluid dynamic as the season kind of moves on, especially given Ime Thompson's increased usage and role that he's going to have starting for the first time in his career from day one. He's been a starter through both seasons so far, but he hasn't been a day one starter. And this is going to be his opportunity to really carve out his role offensively within this offense.
Yeah, I think as far as how this affects Amin's role, I think guys are, Amin's going to get his buckets with his energy and athleticism, right? But I think guys have to make a concerted effort to get Amin going in the fast break. Off misses, Amin streaking, Amin needs to be the first guy up the court, and guys need to be outletting it to him, because they need to cut out a portion of this offense that really allows Amin to thrive, and he really thrives in the open court. And I think it'll be interesting to see Amin with the bench unit as well, giving us a whole different type of change of pace for this offense, but also with the starters. I just think Amin's going to do a lot of the same things he's been doing, but also he'll get some on-ball reps now, and we got to get him out and running.
I think that, and you mentioned this when we did our final top 100 episode, breakdown of the Locked On NBA top 100 players list, talking about Amin being, the really kind of the only true downhill threat on this roster. Now that's also that's a bit of a disservice to Sengun, who did lead the league in drives coming from, two areas of the floor out there just inside the 3-point line. So Sengun does drive a lot for a big man, but it's a very different type of downhill pressure that Sengun provides. It's not as punchy and quick as the downhill pressure that a guard gives you when Amin is getting downhill. It's much faster than when Sengun is operating a bit more methodically with some of his moves. And I really do think the Rockets need to be able to field a lineup, not every game, but certain games. They need to be able to field a lineup that does cater to Ime Thompson's strengths in transition. And I think I will say Sengun isn't afraid to play in transition. I don't know where the narrative is that he's like this slow Euro big. Like, Sengun loves to get out on the break, and he'll ignite a break with those outlet passes. So and same thing for Steven Adams. Steven Adams loves a good outlet pass. So with one of Sengun or Adams, and then Ime Thompson, and then Tari Eason. Tari is the one other guy on the roster that feels the best equipped to run in transition with Ime, because unfortunately, there's no more Jalen Green. There's no more Cam Whitmore. Maybe Josh Okogie a little bit. I'll give Josh, but I don't know how often Josh is ultimately going to be like a part of the mainstay rotation. So like maybe he's another guy you throw into the mix as like you really want to get out and run and transition kind of thing. But it's that, like, the Terra Twins lineup, basically. Shout out to you. The Terra Twins lineup is going to be, a focal point for this team at various points of the season. And I think that, similar to how there were points where the Rockets certainly made a concerted effort, like especially after one point where I think Jalen had commented after like a Wolves game last season where he was like, I like playing fast. Like I want to get out and run and play in transition because those easy opportunities do help get guys going. And I do think that's one way for Ime Thompson to be able to settle into this bigger role offensively by getting some of those easy opportunities. He can't rely on those opportunities alone. He's got to still be able to create in the half court, but that's one way to kind of, loosen things up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely have to treat him like you treat Giannis and, prime Ben Simmons in their primes. Those are the type of guys that no matter what, we are looking to get this guy the ball in transition. Now, this team, I believe, is going to play a lot slower. You know what I mean? The way they're built, they're going to be a much slower team, but they can't forget that they still have this budding star in Ime Thompson, whose strength is in pace.
Weirdly enough, like the Thunder kind of played like a slow brand of basketball too. Like they turned the ball over a lot. They caused a lot of, they got a lot of steals. They got a lot of deflections and disruptions, but they also played really slow and they like to get into the half court because that's where SGA thrives, right? So like, and the Rockets are kind of built similarly to the Thunder where they're just a bigger version of the Thunder, where we hit this on our crossover last week, with Rylan Stiles, the host of Locked on Thunder. But basically, the Rockets have KD, who's like their version of SGA, half court, offensive mastermind, can, get the ISO bucket when he needs it, whatever, orchestrating the offense that way. And then, the Rockets just have a bunch of wings instead of a bunch of guards, which is what OKC has. So those two teams are kind of constructed very similarly, and we'll see how that fares for Houston this upcoming season. Coming up, we do want to talk about what needs to happen for the Rockets to finish top 10 in offensive rating, possibly top 5. That would be a massive jump going from 12th to top 5. What needs to happen for those things to come true? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Madison, this past season, the Rockets finished 12th in offensive rating. Not bad, just outside the top 10. It's respectable, especially when you pair, number 12th in offensive rating with a top 5 defense, which is what they were. And generally, the general consensus is if you can be a part of that discussion where you have both a top 10 and a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense, that's where you get into legitimate contention territory, right? All the most, you go back through the last 10, NBA champions, and I would say most of them, if not all of them, had an offensive and defensive rating somewhere in the top 10. That's a good indicator as to your ability to make a deep run and hopefully try and bring home a title. Now, this Rockets offense, unfortunately for us and for our eyes and what we had to witness last year, was propped up largely by offensive rebounding. Like the running joke last season was literally just get it up on the rim and it's going to be, and then just go at get the rebound and then put it back up because that'll be better offense, or that was at times their best offense with, insane offensive rebounding presences like Steven Adams, like Tari Eason, like Jabari Smith Jr., like Alperen Sengun. All these guys just constantly attacking the glass over Ime Thompson, who I somehow forgotten that mix of incredible offensive rebounders. And the benefit to adding a guy like KD is hopefully there won't be as many second chance opportunities to be had because the ball will just go in the first time, which is great. But when you look at the numbers, if you spread them out, and I don't have the specific numbers, but I do know off memory that the Rockets were 12th in offensive rating. But when you removed their second chance opportunities, when you removed those second chance points, their offensive rating was like bottom 10, bottom 8 in the NBA. It was pretty awful. Like they had a worse half court rating than the Utah Jazz last season and the Portland Trailblazers. I think their half court offense was pretty abysmal. And so to me, one of the things that I think needs to happen, obviously getting KD by himself probably propels the Rockets a little bit further in the discussion offensively, but I'm actually looking at Ime Udoka a lot. Like I know that we've seen, some cutting, some backdoor action, some off ball movement and stuff, but that's also been a big sticking point and topic of discussion through these first 2 years with Ime, is that the offensive playbook has been kind of vanilla, more or less.
Yeah.
And maybe that's by necessity because he hasn't had the personnel to really do more than of what he would like to potentially do. And so I think that this year there's a little bit of an onus on Ime to expand the playbook and do a little bit more now that he's got the a weapon as good as KD, a facilitator like Alperen Sengun, a downhill threat like Ime Thompson. He's got all the tools to do a lot of fun stuff offensively. And if the offense is just more or less of the same, then I think it's going to be a little bit of an indictment on him.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest keys is Ime Udoka really evolving this offense, seeing how he adapts it. He spends a lot of time on his defensive schemes. I do like some of the principles of Ime's offense, but I think it's time to get more complex. These guys have been in the offense for several years. You have several vets in your starting lineup. So it's time to get more movement off the ball, more complex actions that you can read and react with. There goes that word, read and react. but I'm
getting PTSD flashbacks to Steven
right.
Silas. How dare you do that to me? Next, you're going to talk about organic learning.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys. We're past this. But yeah, I definitely think it's going to be big for Ime. But another thing is going to be how well do the players improve? Will we be getting Eurobasket Alperen Sengun? I think that's going to be the biggest indicator if we are a top 10 or top 5 team is what type of Sengun do we get? Do we get the Sengun that we saw in Eurobasket, or is he going to struggle from time to time with his finishing, right? Is he going to struggle to make the extra play, the quick play, the easy play that really gets everybody involved? Is Alperen Sengun going to take the next step and become an engine for this team, a legitimate engine that we can run the ball through over and over and over again and get a good shot out of the engine, whether it's him scoring or passing the ball out to other guys? We know we're going to get efficient basketball from Kevin Durant. We know we're going to get low turnover sets when Fred VanVleet has the ball. We know we're going to get those types of things, and we know that this is a bigger team who's going to punish you and get second chance points. So where are we improving now? We're improving through our young guys who are going to be able to shoot the ball better now. Jabari Smith Jr., we need you at 38, 39% on 6 attempts a game. You know what I mean? So that we don't have as many misses, right? We can trust our guys. And then we need the guys, not just Alperen Sengun, because he's already a great passer, but we need all our guys to take a step in their processing and making good reads for one another and play as a unit, a unit. And that'll vote them into the top 5.
I really think, especially when you look at, Jalen was a solid to, I would say, at least slightly above average playmaker for his role on the team. Although he shouldered a lot of playmaker responsibility, and maybe more responsibility that you would want for somebody that was at times a little bit limited in the reads that he was able to make. But when you look at the at least the 4 starters that we know are out there, right? Fred, Amen, KD, Alpi. I would argue that all 4 of those guys are above average to, elite level passers in some capacity, right? Fred's an above average to solid level playmaker. Amen's got great court vision. He's rough around the edges at times, but I think the makings of a very, very solid creator are there. KD is an underrated playmaker. And then Alperen Sengun can be an elite playmaker. So the question, I think, is at times last season, love the guy, but Dillon Brooks was a bit of a black hole offensively sometimes. Dillon Brooks would get to his moments where he was going to catch the ball and he would make he would make the swing pass at times, but he wasn't going to really create off the bounce or break the defense down and draw a second defender and then kick it out to an open man. It's gonna some of it's gonna depend on who is that 5th guy. Is it Jabari, right? And does Jabari take a step in his processing and passing, like you mentioned? Maybe it's Tari, maybe it's Dorian Finney-Smith. We don't know. But whoever that 5th guy is, that's some of the offensive cohesion is going to hinge on what that role is for that 5th guy within the confines of the offense. To your point about the 3-point shooting, that's probably the lowest hanging fruit for the Rockets offense. They were a bottom 10 3-point shooting team last season. They clocked in at just over 35%, 35.3% from behind the arc. And they only had one guy who was shooting above league average from 3, and that was Dillon Brooks. You can run through the list from the shooters from last season, and you're like, wow, okay, Jalen Green, 35.4. Jabari Smith Jr., 35.4. Fred VanVleet down at 34.5%. Tari Eason at 34.2. If every guy on the roster just, and I don't know, this is probably unrealistic, but like if Jabari gets to the, that 36, 37, 38, like you already said, if Fred gets back to his career average floating, somewhere around 37, 38%, if Tari can take like a 1% or a 1.5%, 2% bump up from where he was, if you can get these guys to at or around league average or slightly above league average, that in and of itself is worthy of like sliding up like 2 or 3 or 4 spots in the offensive rating discussion.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, shooting was one of our biggest weaknesses. That's why we're such a great offensive rebounding team. Go one hand in hand. But yeah, man, I think that's the low hanging fruit. These are young guys. We expect them to become better professionals, better at their craft, and this is the time in their careers where they start to tweak those parts of their game. At any moment now, those 35% shooters can consistently be 37 to 40% shooters, and that's what we need for them to take that leap into the top 10 and top 5. And we also need another superstar elite running mate next to Kevin Durant. Will that be Alperen Sengun? We hope so. If we get the Alperen Sengun from Eurobasket, that is an engine. That is a guy that you can throw the ball to, not just in the mid post, but even out on the perimeter at the 3-point line. And that guy can get down here and heel and make plays for others and score for himself, of course. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest things. Do we have another go-to bucket getter? Do we have another or do we have an elite engine of the offense, right? Because that's not what Kevin Durant does. He doesn't organize offense, right? That's why you can have such an efficient and great offensive scorer in Phoenix, but still get a poor team, right? We need an engine for this offense, and the person that's most prepared for that is Alperen Sengun, and how much of that can be taken up by Ime in his role as well.
We want your thoughts on the Houston Rockets offense this upcoming season. What are your expectations? What are you most excited to see out of this Rockets offense next season? Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
You can find me on Twitter at Madman Leaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.